Should the Detroit Pistons go big swinging in free agency, or should they just take a couple singles? We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, or if you're one of the 50% of people who watch us on YouTube and haven't hit that subscribe button, make sure you guys go and do that at the Locked On Pistons YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. We're on our road to 3,000 subscribers, continuing to show Locked On that we're the best and fastest growing fan base at the Locked On Network. So again, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button over at the Locked On Pistons YouTube channel. Again, best way to support the podcast. So what we're going to be talking about on the podcast today is actually some things that you guys have thrown out to me to suggest. We're going to start off with whether the Pistons should take a big swing in free agency, or should they just be okay with hitting a couple singles here and there. We'll move on to talking about why the last few lottery picks haven't worked out for the Pistons, or the ones that did work out for the Pistons, why they did. And there's something else that we'll save to the very end of the podcast to let you guys know what we'll be talking about. But let's go ahead and get into whether the Pistons should go big swinging in free agency. So everyone's heard about the rumors between the Pistons and Jalen Brunson. Everyone's heard about the rumors between the Pistons and DeAndre Ayton. Everyone's heard about the rumors between the Pistons and Colin Sexton. The question is, should they even want these guys? Should the Pistons want to go after these three top free agents now that they have some cap space to do so this upcoming season, where they're projected to be around $30 million. We'll eventually have salary cap expert Keith Smith on the podcast after the playoffs to really dig deep. But on Spotrac, they have the Pistons estimated around $30 million to be freed up this offseason. So I don't know. I'm not completely sold on going after these guys. I don't want the Pistons to overspend on a guy just because they have cap space and he happens to be the best guy out there. Like, for example, are any of those guys someone you want to pay $25 million? I'd say no. Maybe DeAndre Ayton, but I don't know. DeAndre Ayton would be the guy I'd be the closest to wanting to do that with. Would you want to play them $20 million? Sure. But I don't think $20 million is going to be enough to make them pick the Pistons over another team. Like we've talked about in the podcast before, I think if you want someone to pick the Pistons over another team in free agency, it has to be because you have to have some kind of incentive. And usually for a team like the Pistons, it's often the more money. So here's what I'd rather do. And I know there's just been a little bit of a buildup about this Zach LaVine. I know Zach LaVine kind of like with his last statement he put out with the Bulls, it kind of has people thinking he might leave. I'm telling you right now, if he leaves the Bulls, it won't be to come to the Pistons. He wouldn't leave the Bulls to come to Detroit. That just wouldn't make any sense. So I don't see that happening either. Okay. What I would rather the Pistons do is just simply, with this cap space, don't take any expensive long-term deals. If you can't, if you have to overspend like that for some of those top guys that you're interested in, just take some lower key guys. Some guys that I've mentioned on the last podcast with some low key signs that the Pistons should grow after. Gary Harris. Gary Harris is a good pickup I think the Pistons could possibly get as a backup guy, as a good player who knows his role and is able to contribute to the team, veteran player. Another guy, Ricky Rubio. I think Ricky Rubio would be a low-key good signing as a backup point guard. Again, it all depends about how they want to handle the guard rotation, which we'll find out about that after the draft, which is before the free agency. So we'll have a better idea of that. But if they want to try to start Killian Hayes again as shooting guard, I think Ricky Rubio would be a nice guy to have as your backup point guard, and possibly even as Ricky Rubio and Killian Hayes in the backcourt. I think Ricky Rubio would be a great mentor to Killian Hayes. So he's a guy that I wouldn't be too mad about going after. Another guy we mentioned on the last podcast, JaVale McGee. I tweeted him out earlier last night. JaVale McGee, I think, would be a nice pickup for the Pistons. He's a nice lob threat. He's a veteran guy. I know for a while there, he was just known for Shaqtin' the Fool. But he's went on to be a solid contributor on multiple contending teams, including this year's Phoenix Suns. So I think JaVale McGee would be a nice pickup for this team. You do what the Pistons need, which is be a vertical threat around the rim, finish around the rim, dunk around the rim pressure, lob threat. I think he would protect the basket as well, pretty well for the Pistons, whether that's starting for them or coming off the bench as a backup behind Isaiah Stewart, whichever one. Another person, Robin Lopez, I think would be a low-key good pickup to back up Isaiah Stewart. Just a bunch of low-key signs like this. Thomas Bryant, possibly. Like a bunch of low-key guys that could just fill out the roster, help you take another step forward. It won't be a major step forward, but it'll be an okay step forward. And they won't lock you in cap space wise for the next 5 years or something, or really stricken you like that with the cap space. No, you'll still be freed up. They'll be on low cost contracts. You could trade them in a year from now. You don't have to sign into long-term deals. Like, I feel like that would be, it's probably the way I'm going here. I know there's another Pistons have kind of been linked to, Miles Bridges too. But the problem is that a lot of these guys that the Pistons seem to be interested in, or rumored to be interested in, are restricted free agents. And it's really hard to get restricted free agents, from other teams. It takes a few days. You get locked into having to wait around. You can't offer contracts to other players because you're waiting to see the decision that the other team makes. Like, it's very hard. And I don't know if the Hornets are going to be okay with giving up Miles Bridges. I doubt the Suns want to give up DeAndre Ayton. Like, I just don't see that kind of thing happening. So I think what's going to end up happening as the Pistons end up going after smaller signings, maybe, I've had a few of you guys mention, I'm forgetting. Oh, Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones would be a never good signing for the Pistons. I think would be a really good backup point guard, or you could even possibly have him at shooting guard or with small ball lineups. Like, I think he would be a nice signing there. Jarrett Culver would be a nice low key signing. Like, a bunch of you guys get the drift where I'm going with this. This I mentioned Lonnie Walker would be another low key signing. Dante DiVincenzo. Like, these are guys who would contribute to the team. They're not superstars. They're not going to take up a lot of your cap space, but they would definitely be better than some of the players you had on last year. They'd help you take another step. Pick some guys that would help fill out the roster and fit what you're trying to do, rather than just get like a superstar talent or high quality talent, whatever. There's some guys that fit your system better, fit what you're trying to do better. And I think that will help the Pistons improve maybe 7 wins next year. And then you can go next year if you want and try free up cap space and spend big then. Or maybe 2 years from now, you feel like 2 years from now is the better place to try to spend your cash. I'm just not convinced that the top guys in this free agency are worth spending on. At first I was with Miles Bridges, but I've kind of drifted away from that as well. DeAndre Ayton, I would love to have DeAndre Ayton. I just don't think, I really don't see Phoenix giving him up. So again, I think the Pistons will probably be better off just getting a bunch of these low-key signings, fill out the roster with better fitting players, shooting guys, long range or 3-and-D players, long athletic big men who are vertical threats around the rim, like stuff like that. I think that would be a successful offseason, along with whoever they pick in the upcoming draft at the top of the draft. I think this would be a good offseason if they just did something like that. I think we could be happy with that. When we come back, we'll talk about what happened with the last few lottery picks with the Pistons, why they didn't work out, and why some of them ended up working out. This is one of the ones that you guys suggested. You guys tweeted at me, said you guys wanted to hear about this. We're going to talk about that when we come back. But first, I have to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, your guys' favorite sponsor, Built Bar. You guys want to know the best part about Built Bars? They're healthy and they're delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's really easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. All Built Bars and Puff Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. Have you guys tried the Puffs Bar yet? We are going crazy for Puffs. They come in crazy flavors like banana cream pie and even churro. And who doesn't want a protein bar that tastes like a churro? And they're only 140 calories. Sign me up. And if that's not enough flavor for you, you might want to try the Mix Box. The Mix Box comes with 12 different flavors of bars and puffs. Built Bar, make sure that there is something for everyone. Know what my flavor is? You guys know what my favorite flavor is. It's the peanut butter flavor, but they have all kinds of other flavors like coconut almond. They got cherry barcia, strawberry, raspberry, blueberry, all kinds of flavors that you can constantly be checking out at Built.com. And if you're also going to Built.com all the time, you'll see the limited time flavors that are coming out what feels like every other week. So again, go to Built.com, but use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. It's the best way to support the podcast. Also, make sure you guys are leaving a 5-star review down on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to the podcast on that platform. I'd really appreciate it. So the other day I tweeted out, hey, you guys have any suggestions that you guys want me to talk about on the podcast? It's the offseason. We can be a little bit more creative with some of the things we talk about. And one of you guys tweeted me. The name on Twitter is @LaundryRoomGM. It says, how about your take on why our last 10 first-round picks from the last decade have or have not worked out? Why? Was it opportunity, coaching, talent just wasn't there, wrong fit, gave up on them too soon, etc.? What was it? So I thought that was pretty interesting. So let's talk about these last 10 lottery or first-round picks that the Pistons have had. And I'm going to keep it a buck. I think all of us know it hasn't been very good with the Pistons in the first round. If it was, they would probably have been in a better spot the last decade. They haven't hit on many of these. So let's go through them. We'll start all the way back in 2009. Man, this is a long time ago. This is a throwback one. It's kind of crazy to consider, like, to know that this guy's old now. I just never can picture this guy old. But the first one we're starting off with 2009 Austin Day. What was wrong with Austin Day? Well, I was a wee little child back then, okay? So I'm not going to sit here and act like I was just, up all night reading all the articles, knowing exactly what was going on with Austin Day. But Austin Day, it feels like just wasn't consistent enough of what he was supposed to be good at, which was outside shooting at his length and his size. So I think that one has to be put on him. I don't think you can put that on coaching. I don't think you can put that on opportunity. I remember one year he came out and he was the starter opening night, and he had like the first 11 games starting, even if it just wasn't playing that well. I don't think his talent was there, and what he was supposed to be great at, he just wasn't consistent enough at it. So I think that one, while he was an interesting talent, an interesting prospect, obviously because of his size and his supposed shooting ability, definitely didn't work out how you wanted it to work out. I think that majority is put on him for just not being consistent and developing what he was supposed to become. Greg Monroe. So Greg Monroe, I actually feel like this one's 2010. We're going in order. Greg Monroe, I feel like actually was a fine pick. He actually played pretty well for the Pistons. I thought he was really good for the Detroit Pistons. He ended up getting a nice contract with the Milwaukee Bucks after. I thought he played fine for them the first year with them. Greg Monroe's problem was it's not even really his issue. Like he just had the NBA chains underneath his feet. And I kind of feel bad for him because he's a really good back to the basket player. He was really nice offensive player, a tremendous footwork, nice guy on the glass. The NBA just changed underneath him. No one went to the back to the basket guy no more. You're not seeing just big men posting up all the time anymore. Like his play style quickly became basically archaic. And there was nothing really he could have done about it besides become like a sniper from deep and all of a sudden become a great defender. Like, I kind of feel bad for him. I don't know if you can say that just didn't work out. The Pistons and Greg Monroe kind of just got unlucky that the NBA just changed underneath their feet. I think that was just more unlucky, man. Next one would be 2011, Brandon Knight. Brandon Knight, I guess one of the answers you gave me was, did they give up on him too soon? I think they gave up on Brandon Knight too soon because he went on to play for the Milwaukee Bucks and have a near all-star season with them before he tore almost every ligament in his knee and Achilles and all this stuff that happened to him. He dealt with an insane amount of injuries after Milwaukee. But he ended up going to Milwaukee, like I said, and having a near all-star season, played really well for them, and actually played really well for the Phoenix Suns too, coming off the bench, starting for them, playing sixth man. I think he carved himself a nice role, and if he didn't continue to destroy his knee over and over, I think he'd still be in the NBA right now. His role, I thought, was pretty nice in the NBA. I thought he carved himself out a nice role as a simply scorer. But yeah, I think injuries really destroyed him. But as far as his Pistons tenure, I think they gave up on him too soon. Andre Drummond, I think he worked out. He absolutely worked out. I know people like to drag Andre. People like to apparently boo him when he comes back to Detroit. I don't agree with that. But Andre Drummond, by far, if you're excluding Kay Cunningham, Andre Drummond, by far, is the Pistons' best draft pick of the past decade. It's not close. He was an all-NBA player one year. He was a multi-time All-Star. He led the Pistons to the playoffs. I mean, he did things for the organization that hadn't happened in so long. And yes, they didn't end up winning a playoff game. And yes, they didn't probably live up to expectations that they wanted to have. But Andre Drummond turned himself, improved every year with the Pistons, improved at just about everything, was an all-star, was a one-time all-NBA member. He 100% was the right pick. He hit. The Pistons hit on him. Nothing else to say. KCP, another guy. I think they hit on KCP. That was a nice pick. I think the kind of thing the thing that happened with KCP was just, I think it was just, time to part ways. He wanted a bigger contract. The Pistons shouldn't have given him that big contract. He went on, continued to be a good player elsewhere, someone that probably wouldn't have helped the Pistons in that role as much as he's helping, like maybe the Lakers, obviously, or the Wizards, whatever. But KCP is a nice player. He's carved himself a nice role in the NBA. I think the Pistons hit on that one. I don't know if that one was, gave up on him too soon. No, they played him. He got his years in here, and when it came up to his contract time, he wanted a little bit too much money that the Pistons shouldn't have given him. He got it somewhere else, played well, won a championship somewhere else. I think he was a good pick. Just time to part ways. mutual thing. It is what it is. Sometimes it happens like that. So KCP and Andre, I think both of them were hits. So that was actually back-to-back years when the Pistons hit on guys. I think that's the only time you'll see that happen. Stanley Johnson. You guys know I have a soft spot for Stanley, man. Stanley was the first guy I ever thought was going to save the Pistons. Obviously, it didn't happen. Stanley, I feel like, was a mix of all of these things. I don't think the coaching was tremendous for him. I don't think they used him the best way. Talent-wise, he was always just a raw talent, but never really, carved out those skills and really developed those raw talent, those raw skills that he had. I think he was somewhat of a wrong fit too. And he had dealt with injuries too. I think that back injury that he had, I believe it was his second season, earlier in his second season, that sucked all the athleticism that he possibly had in him. He hasn't been the same since that back injury athletically. So I feel like all of those things combined say why Stanley Johnson did not work out for the Pistons. I think majority of it, though, has to go on Stanley because he has a ton of raw skills, a raw talent, and he just never ironed those out. He never just sharpened those skills. He wasn't, I won't say it was the best situation. He wasn't helped the best, but eventually you have to figure it out because he went somewhere else. He went to multiple different areas. He went to Toronto, and he just never really carved out those skills. And again, I said that back injury really hurt him. So combine all of those things for why Stanley Johnson just didn't work out with the Detroit Pistons. Henry Ellison, straight bust, missed, nothing else. It wasn't no give up on them too soon. Wasn't no coaching. Wasn't no opportunity. He was just a straight bust. Wasn't good. It is what it is. They whiffed on him. Luke Kennard. Listen, I know everyone says they should have taken Donovan Mitchell, and obviously Donovan Mitchell was the better player. But Luke Kennard 100% was a hit, y'all. Luke Kennard is a really good player. He was a really good player for the Pistons. I honestly was mad that he left. Now, they got Saddiq Bey out of it. They did give up 4 second-round picks, which is pretty crazy. But they got Saddiq Bey, and Saddiq Bey's freaking good too. So I'm not mad about him being gone. But Luke Kennard was a really good player for the Pistons, and he's a really good player for the Los Angeles Clippers. He's a fine player. They hit on him. I don't know. None of this was wrong fit, gave up on him too soon, coaching or anything. Again, it was just another one of those like KCP scenarios. He put in good years here. He's a good player still for another team, but it was just time they thought to move on from him and move a different direction. I still think he was a hit, and they ended up turning him into another great player in Saddiq Bey. So I think Luke Kennard's pick was a good pick. Even though it wasn't the best pick there, Donovan Mitchell would have. Luke Kennard still was a good pick. He was a hit. Sekou Doumbouya, this one's another one that just hurts me. Hurts me in my core. Sekou was drafted as a project. I will go down with this. I don't care. People don't have to agree with me. I will go down to my grave saying this. Sekou was a project that was never treated like a project. When he was drafted, we were told this guy's not going to be ready for 3 years. He's going to take a few years to develop. The Pistons gave him 2 seasons with a pandemic cut in between one. And then that was it. He was expected to come in and contribute instantly in his second season. He was never treated like a project. He was never, in the second season, he wasn't sent down to the G League to play. He wasn't given minutes on a rebuilding team. He wasn't like a focal point of a project. Like, he was never at any point treated like what we were told he was supposed to be when he comes in. So while people can say Sekou didn't develop, he didn't develop his skills, he never really got better. Listen, I'll be alone with this one. 100%. It was opportunity, coaching, and wrong fit. If Sekou goes to another team, like I'll say Toronto, if he gets drafted by Toronto and they know he's a project and they treat him like a project, don't even expect him to play, let him develop, and they focus on developing him for 3 years, then let him play, he'd be able to be in the NBA and he'd be playing pretty good basketball. That's where I'm at. No one will ever change my mind. I'm not changing my mind on it. No one can convince me otherwise. The Pistons, if they weren't going to treat him like a project, they certainly have drafted him. That's been my only issue with it. Not that I thought Sekou was going to be great. He may have turned out to be a bust anyways, but he was never given a fair chance because he was supposed to be treated like a project and never was treated like a project. It never made sense to me, and that's why I really don't want the Pistons to ever take a project again, because they never treat them like projects. They tell you they're a project, and then if they're not great 1 year in, they're gone. It doesn't make sense. And then leading up to the final one, Killian Hayes. Killian Hayes, the book is still out on him. We don't know. We don't know yet. He showed some really good progression the last month and a half of the season this past year. He's only played in 98 career games. The talent is absolutely there. You see the IQ, you see the passing, you see the development, you see how hard he wants to work. He already improved his body in one offseason, gained like 20 pounds. The work is there. The talent is there. I think the work ethic is there. It's just going to be about whether he develops it. the book is out. We don't know. We don't know what the case is going to be with Killian Hayes. So I can't answer that one yet. Come back to me in a year or two from now. So that's where I'm at. The last 10 first round picks, why they did or didn't work out, the ones that were hits and weren't hits. If you guys disagree with me on any of these that we talked about, let me know in the comment section down below, or you can tweet me over at Kukahill on Twitter. Again, that's at Kukahill on Twitter, or you can simply put it down below in the comment section. I love interacting with you guys. So again, just do that if you want to interact with that. When we come back, we'll talk about what are some things, if I had to pick some specific skill sets that I want to see certain players work on this offseason, what would they be and why? We'll talk about that when we come back. But first, I have to tell you guys about another one of our sponsors, BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting stats and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, and this weekend's run to the Roses as the Kentucky Derby is back. BetOnline is a continued source for all your sports wagering information from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about their trends and action today. And if you go head over to BetOnline.net, you'll see that's more than just basketball and baseball. You have boxing, you have football, you have golf, you have hockey, horse racing, martial arts, soccer, and tennis. And if you go to the NBA games, you want to bet on some of the NBA series, you'll see that right now, the 76ers are plus 750 to come back and win this series. I'm sorry, Philly fans. I don't see that happening. I'm going to take the minus 120 that the Heat win this series. Joel Embiid got hurt at the wrong time. He seems to never be able to play through a whole season without getting hurt. For that reason, I am taking the Miami Heat at minus 120 money line to beat the Philadelphia 76ers. That's the kind of thing you can do over at betonline.net. So again, make sure you head out to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about their trends in action today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. It's the best way to support the podcast. Yada, yada, yada. You guys get all of that. All right, so if I had to pick some skills, a specific skill that I'd like to see certain players work on and come back better at next season. This was a question one of you guys asked me on Twitter. You guys wanted me to talk about on the podcast. We're talking about it right now. So first one, right off the bat, Cade Cunningham, I want him to put on strength and improve his ball handling. I know some people will go with the shooting. That's fine. But I think his strength and ball handling go hand in hand. It'll help him cut down some turnovers. It'll help him get to his spots better. It'll help him get to the rim better. And it'll help him draw more fouls and get to the free throw line more. So for Cade, that's my number one thing that I'd like to see him improve on going into next season. Saddiq Bey. I like to see Saddiq Bey simply and only this, become more consistent of a player from outside. I don't really care about, he developed and proved me wrong about all the other stuff he could possibly bring to the table. And honestly, I don't care if everything else that he brings to the table stays around where it's at right now. If he just becomes more consistent from beyond the arc, he is a little bit of a streaky shooter. He's a streaky player we saw this past season. I'd like to see him simply become more consistent of a shooter. I think that will translate to higher points per game this next season. Much better impact on the games throughout an entire season for the Pistons. Again, I think that's his biggest weakness right now, just being able to string multiple games in a row without having a struggling night from outside. He is a streaky shooter. Hopefully he can correct that this upcoming season. That would be the one thing I want to see change from Saddiq Bey. Isaiah Stewart. Oh, God. What is it with Isaiah Stewart? I guess it would have to be his outside shooting because I don't think that there's anything he can do about him not being able to finish inside. I don't see him being able to all of a sudden jump high. I don't see him all of a sudden being able to, dunk on guys. I don't see, anything. Like his height's not changing. His vertical's not changing. Like that stuff's just not going to go nowhere. So I don't think he'll ever be able to really finish in the paint like that. So I guess the one thing I have to say is outside shooting and even mid-range shooting. He'd have to be an excellent outside shooter, I believe, for it to make enough of a difference to where he could be a starting center in the NBA. I still think he's just going to be a backup somewhere or backup with Detroit, and I think that's fine. But if I had to pick one skill set, I guess, for him to improve on, it would be outside shooting. And coming up in a close second is simply being able to screen. He was way too inconsistent with his screen. Sometimes he hit guys, sometimes he didn't. Dribble handoffs were an absolute nightmare. Dribble handoffs need to be wiped out from his game until he learns how to actually set those screens with dribble handoffs. That's a skill. So coming in a close second is screening. But number one is outside shooting. Killian Hayes, by far and away, aggressiveness, getting to the basket, and finishing around the basket. That right there that's what's going to take Killian to the next level. People will say his outside shooting, that's fine. But if he continues to be aggressive like he was the final month of the season, and he continues to get to the rack like he was, and he continues to be aggressive at the rack and finish around there, he'll improve drastically next season. He'll show why he was the number 7 overall pick. He'll have a chance of becoming the starting shooting guard for the Pistons if they don't draft like Jaden Ivey or something, or pick up somebody in free agency. If he does that, he has a chance of living up to that number 7 overall pick. Outside shooting would be nice, but simply being aggressive, getting to the basket, and continuing what he was doing at the end of last season will result in more free throws, him getting to the line more, getting easier buckets, and having a higher percentage from the field. And that will open up more passing lanes for him to be able to kick out and find guys as well. That by far is his number one thing going into next season. Who else would I like to do? We'll do Hamidou Diallo, even though I believe Hamidou Diallo will not be on the team next year. If I had to pick something with Hamidou Diallo, I don't know if I don't know if you can call this really a skill, but like I just want him to be able to calm down and play in a half court setting. Be able to control that ball of fire that he is and find a way to contribute in a settled offense, in a half court, in a professional offense, in a professional basketball game. Not in transition and when stuff's just chaotic, going all over the place, and find miscellaneous ways of contributing to the game. He needs to find a way to be able to contribute in a professional offense and in a slow down offense and a half court offense. And if he can do that, he'll stick around in the NBA and be able to be a contributor, whether it's for the Pistons or another team. I think that's the one thing he needs to improve on going into next season. And then the final guy that we'll do is Marvin Bagley. Marvin Bagley, the one thing I'd like to see him improve on, I'm not going to say defense, because defense, I feel like it's just not going to be, it's just not going to happen. I don't think, he's been a bad defender for 4 years, 3 years. It's not changing. It is what it is. It's one of those things you just have to hope he eventually gets to maybe passable. So the thing I would like to see Marvin Bagley improve on is his free throw shooting. If he can become a decent free throw shooter, if he can he gets to the line a lot. He gets fouled a lot. In the games that he played with the Pistons, he got to the free throw line 3 times a game. If he gets more minutes and continues to play aggressive around the rim and gets to the free throw line, if he can shoot around 80% from the free throw line, 78%, 77% from the free throw line, you'll see that 14.6 points per game that he scored with the Pistons. It'll go up to like 15, 16, 17 points a game with the Pistons if he continues to get like 27 minutes off the bench or as a starter potentially. Who knows where he'll end up next season. But I think free throw shooting will really take his game to the next level offensively. He needs to be able to hit free throws, and if he's able to do that, again, he'll be able to average like 17 and 10. I think that's capable, but he has to be able to hit his free throws. I think that's the part that will really unlock his game. I don't think he'll ever be a great outside shooter, but again, free throw shooting, free throw shooting, free throw shooting, free throw shooting. They're bunnies, they're easy points, they're free. You have to make teams pay for following you around the rim. If he does that, I see a future where he could possibly average 17 and 10 if he has those kind of minutes. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you guys are making Locked On NBA your second listen of every single day, from the first jump ball, the play-in tournament, to the last possession of the finals. Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. Let me know what you guys thought about what we talked about on the podcast in today's podcast over on Twitter at Kuka Hill, or in the comment section down below. Love hearing from you guys. Love interacting with all of you. So make sure you guys go ahead and do that. And until Monday, I'll see you guys then. Enjoy your guys' weekend. Enjoy the NBA playoffs. Stay safe, and peace out, everybody.